Good afternoon. My name is Leanna Rowan.
I'm Brian Smith.
And I'm Emily Talbot. Today we will be discussing a research project surrounding the topic of student-centered learning and how this can be utilised within schools to increase engagement and allow students to achieve academic outcomes.
Our literature reviews focus on current research and academic discourse related to key aspects of student-centered learning such as peer collaboration and project-based learning, with an examination of the benefits and challenges of implementing student-centered learning in classrooms. Through considered examination of these literature reviews, key themes arose which will be discussed later in this presentation. These themes reflect the importance of teacher implementation of student-centered learning and cognitive benefits of implementing student-centered learning. While significant benefits arose within the research, key findings also discovered distinct constraints within this pedagogical approach.
Consolidation of literature has found that student-centered learning, an approach heavily rooted in constructivist pedagogy, overall produces a significant number of benefits within the classroom. Within this, student-centered learning allows for a learner-led construction of meaning within education. This allows students to build and transfer knowledge based on real-world connections. Across the research reviewed, the implementation of student-centered learning was found to be the most significant factor in determining its success within the classroom. Research found that when teachers were properly educated on how and why to incorporate student-centered learning, they were more likely to implement it in their classrooms, especially when it aligned with their values and educational beliefs.
Within the scope of cognition and learning, the use of student-centered learning successfully satisfies students' psychological need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Moreover, the appropriate use of student-centered learning can foster key skills in students, such as self-regulation, flexibility, and the ability to adapt within an educational setting. Through the lens of group collaboration, student-centered learning plays a significant role in the development of knowledge. The utilisation of peer collaboration can be harnessed to assist students of lower ability. Research into key discourse found that when students of lower ability were placed with students at or above stage standard, each person in the group benefited academically, with lower ability students gaining deeper conceptual understanding than if they were to learn within an independent setting. Moreover, literature suggested that peer collaboration had a significant effect on students from ESL backgrounds, improving not only their academic ability, but also deepening their language acquisition. This informal environment provided less pressure and stress to achieve set outcomes, which overall allowed students to demonstrate skills and understanding.
A key tenet of student-centered learning is the concept of project-based learning. Project-based learning enables an interdisciplinary approach which allows students to see further relevance to their learning. With project-based learning, student-centered learning has increased student motivation, critical thinking skills, and peer learning. So not only is content knowledge improved by project-based learning, but skills that would be transferable beyond schooling, such as questioning and problem solving, will also be increased, as well as intrinsic motivation.
While the examination into literature surrounding student-centered learning found distinct benefits within the successful application of the approach, a number of constraints were found. These largely centered around teachers' lack of knowledge in how to effectively and appropriately implement student-centered learning. In addition to this, student-centered learning in the form of group work required strict observation and facilitation from the teacher to ensure students each participated fairly. Gershon, 2013, recognized the difficulty in fairly assessing individuals he nicknamed the passengers, a term largely referring to those who produce minimal effort within a collaborative or student-focused environment. A summation of the constraints reflects the need to effectively approach student-centered learning. At the center of this is consistent engagement and teacher facilitation of tasks.
Our group utilised a variety of data collection protocols, with Brian and Leanna conducting surveys, whilst I conducted observations and an interview. Brian's survey participants were pre-service teachers, whilst Leanna and I interviewed and surveyed current teachers with experience ranging from 3 to over 20 years.
The analysis of these data collections revealed a number of themes. The first of these was that student-centered learning had a largely positive impact on student engagement. My survey focused primarily on project-based learning as a key aspect of student-centered learning. The teachers that I surveyed were all familiar with project-based learning, having either utilised it in their own classrooms or seen it in action in another teacher's class. Those who had used it felt that it was a highly beneficial teaching strategy as it encourages independent thinking and makes education authentic and highly relevant for students. These ideas are supported by current research which claims that project-based learning is highly valuable in preparing students to be critical thinkers and engaged in their education. Although the participants surveyed amount to a small sample size, all of their responses are in accordance with varying aspects of current research surrounding project-based learning, suggesting that the research conducted has a very real-world application in schools in modern-day Australia.
Overall, the findings of my survey also support student-centered learning teaching practices. The pre-service teachers I surveyed generally believe that it is a beneficial and practical method of teaching and has a rightful place in today's curriculum, with a majority, or 60%, having already incorporated student-centered learning into their lesson plans and 66% being willing to transfer controlled students through student-centered learning activities.
My observations and interview also showed positive feedback surrounding student-centered learning. Key trends that I observed were that peer collaboration had distinct benefits within the classroom, despite different class environments and times of day. Moreover, the teacher that I had interviewed responded that when student-centered learning was utilised appropriately, students from non-English speaking backgrounds could improve academically and linguistically. It is important to note, however, that this result was largely in reflection of who EALD students were grouped with. Overall, the interviewee had reservations in implementing group work and determining its effectiveness in terms of engagement and academic success. Despite this, the responses from the interview indicate that the use of peer collaboration had a place within the classroom, and if used correctly and with the most responsive classroom, it could be harnessed as a highly effective pedagogical tool. The reservations felt by my interviewee brings us to our second theme. Student-centered learning can be problematic if not implemented effectively. Within my study, I found that classes who were of higher ability and high self-regulated capacity proved to respond positively to group work. This was indicated in the overall tone of the classroom and student ability to contribute to discussion at the conclusion of group activities. These discussions largely indicated student understanding had improved and lesson outcomes had been achieved. Conversely, when peer collaboration was utilised within a disruptive or lower ability class, there was a stark difference in student reception to the approach. In most cases, when the approach was harnessed in a disruptive classroom, misbehaviour and distractions were increased. Observations conducted found that in these classes, some students would participate. However, many would become distracted and go off track from their tasks. A key note from the observation was that when students were paired with friends or particularly disruptive students, the approach resulted in significantly negative results. When students were grouped at random, or with students that were not part of their friend circle, there was a distinct increase in engagement. Trends found in my results indicated that maturity levels and ability largely dictated the effectiveness of peer collaboration. The findings from the interview I conducted resulted in agreement with the observations found across my practicum.
All of the teachers I surveyed had reservations about project-based learning in the classroom due to what they saw as its ineffective implementation. These reservations essentially boiled down to two main ideas: lack of teacher confidence and perceived increased workload for teachers. Teachers are not widely trained in project-based learning as a method of teaching, and as such, its desired outcomes, so that of student engagement and achievement of academic outcomes, are often not met because teachers lack confidence, which leads to disengagement of students and subsequently behavioural issues. Participants also suggested that the time involved in the preparation and implementation of project-based learning could be more extensive than currently required for lesson preparation and marking, thus adding to an already very full teacher workload.
My survey of pre-service teachers touched on a similar thread. Even though participants generally felt that student-centered learning was a worthwhile approach to teaching, they were less confident that students could manage the various roles of student-centered learning, suggesting that perhaps they, as teachers, require more training and education themselves into how to effectively implement this into their praxis. This leads us on to our final theme, which is that current and pre-service teachers feel that professional learning would be highly beneficial to the effective implementation of student-centered learning in the classroom. 71% of pre-service teachers I surveyed indicated that they would be interested in undertaking professional development that incorporates student-centered learning.
Similarly, all of my survey participants indicated that they would be interested in undertaking professional development to learn more about project-based learning, supporting the research indicating that project-based learning is increasing in popularity and will likely be seen more prominently in modern education's future. Based on our findings from our literature reviews and our data collection analyses, we have designed an action-based research project that focuses on student-centered learning and has two main outcomes, which form our two focus questions. The first, does student-centered learning increase motivation in students? And does student-centered learning assist students in achieving academic outcomes? Our research will be primarily qualitative and is designed to be relatively unobtrusive so that students do not feel they are part of an experiment, which may lead them to question the validity of their education in our class and become disengaged. As such, we will primarily use observations and small amounts of regular feedback from students to gauge student engagement, as well as formative and summative assessments to gauge outcome achievement.
Our proposed action research study will see us incorporating a high level of student-centered learning in forms of peer collaboration and project-based learning, focusing on an inquiry approach. This student-centered approach will account for at least 80% of our lesson plans. This number was chosen as we felt that it needed prominence in our classroom, but 100% of each lesson was perhaps unfeasible. This will, of course, be reviewed as part of the ongoing reflection and revision of action research. Within 5 minutes of each lesson, we will have students fill in slips of paper or online reviews anonymously, indicating one thing that worked well and one thing that could be improved from their lesson. The purpose of this is twofold: to have the students critically reflect on elements of a lesson, thus promoting higher order thinking, and also to allow us as teachers to reflect and refocus future lessons, thus promoting a cycle of reflection and improvement. Making the action research highly relevant each lesson, we will have the opportunity to reflect on this practice, especially at the mid-year and end-of-year markers, as students' formative assessment results will be available. This, along with the summative assessments undertaken by students, will indicate whether achievement of academic outcomes have been achieved. Throughout each lesson, teacher observation will be utilized to assess whether students are engaged, on track, and achieving lesson outcomes. A number of points need to be considered for the practical implementation of this proposed action research study. One is that this proposed lesson structure will only pertain to our own classes. We hope this approach will eventually take on a whole school approach. However, the results of our action research will have to support our claims of its expected benefits, and so we will have to reflect on and review our results before our approach will be considered beyond our classroom. Also, approval will have to be given for this plan, at least by our head of department, as our approach, although supported by current academic literature, is still somewhat new and untried in most schools. As such, there will undoubtedly be unforeseen teething issues.
As action research is a natural part of teaching, once approval is obtained by our head of department, we do not feel that students and their parents need to be informed, as syllabus outcomes to be achieved for our class will be the same throughout all other classes. Our methods of achieving them are the only differences. It is always an ethical consideration when giving one class preferential treatment. However, until the validity of student-centered learning is proven in our class, it would perhaps be more unethical to encourage all teachers to adopt this style of learning, especially as our literature reviews and data collection suggest most teachers are not confident with implementing student-centered learning, despite viewing it as a positive pedagogical approach. It would be prudent to wait until the results of our action research study have been collated before encouraging a school-wide adoption of student-centered learning.
If positive results are achieved and approval is granted to extend this teaching method to the classes of other teachers, a larger scale action research study could be conducted in which classes of all abilities are able to be compared. Teachers will also need to undergo some training to ensure they are confident in facilitating a student-centered learning classroom. This could be done as professional development seminars, lesson observation of our lessons, as well as reading of current literature surrounding the practical application and potential benefits of student-centered learning. As action research is cyclical, our proposed action research study will be constantly evolving as we study, review, implement changes our findings support, and then repeat this process to continually improve education in the secondary classroom. Based on current published research, it is fair to assume that findings from our action research will support the idea that student-centered learning increases motivation in students, as well as increasing their achievement of academic outcomes. As such, it is expected that our findings will encourage us, as teachers, to adjust our pedagogy to lend to a much greater focus on incorporation of student-centered learning. This will likely also include us giving students more autonomy over their education and their teaching of concepts and topics to one another, thus improving their knowledge of the content as well as their sense of self-efficacy. This, in turn, will further prepare them for the future by ensuring they learn transferable skills, such as critical literacy and collaborative skills that will be required for them to be societal contributors at the forefront of a competitive globalized world.